Good evening, everyone. Everyone that's here so far, everyone that's on time. Thank you for joining us, albeit a little later than we had planned. I'm joined by the alter ego of Jasper Wickens, which is Adrian von Zaal, who is over here in the winery. Very appropriate. So Swerwer are a new winery to Museum Wines. They're the only recent edition of 2022. I met Jasper in Swartland in January, courtesy of Ian Nordie, who was very keen to introduce me to anyone who was looking for UK representation. I said, no, I'm not looking for anything new. I haven't been to South Africa since 2019. I'm just catching up with old friends and also with a number of winemakers who we've taken on during the course of COVID and lockdown. Because there were people like Brookdale, Coleman, to name a couple of them that joined the Museum Wines portfolio during 2020. Before we'd ever met anyone from there. So obviously we were catching up with new friends as well as old, but Ian insisted on taking me to see Jasper, and I'm very glad he did, because the wines are very exciting. I had tried them years ago when he was with another UK agent. I actually met Giles, who's on the call. Some of you will know him as Liberty. Met him at the Swerwer stand at the Swartland Independent Producer Festival at the end of 2019, which has been the last time I'd been in South Africa prior to January this year. So the wines are amazing. I know some of you couldn't wait to get into your packs and have tried a couple of them already, which is fine. But for those of you that have sort of held fire, let's get cracking, and you can now get into your pouches. Without further ado, because we are on a time schedule, because Jasper's electricity and internet is going to cut off in 53 minutes, let's get cracking. I'll introduce Jasper, JC Wickens from Swerwer.
Hi guys. Well, Daniel, thanks a lot for having me. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. No, thank you for joining in a week later. Yeah, times are interesting this side. But yeah, here we are. Nevertheless, it's great to be here, and thanks for having me. And yeah, thanks for spreading the gospel that side for my wines. I really appreciate it. Yeah. I hope you all have a good tasting. And yeah, please, I'm open for any questions if you like. Yeah.
Cool. So we're going to kick off with, I'm sure you can all count 1 to 4. So S1 on your pouches. I can see David's already got some in his glass from the color of this wine, which is a phenomenal color. This is just Roygroen Semillon. So tell everyone about this bonkers wine.
Okay, no, cool. I'll get that in my glass as well. Yeah, the Roygroen is a very interesting thing. It's actually it's a grape variety that or it's a mutation that's been hey, look at that little one. It's a Semillon mutation that's been actually so common in South Africa, but forgotten for some time. I mean, if you just now, you will, and a lot of you talking about. So mutation basically happened over. Can you guys hear me? That happened over the 300 plus years of cultivating Semillon in South Africa. I guess basically, if you bring it out of the cool of France and the overcast, not out of the into the sun of Africa, you're gonna have over time you're gonna have a wine basically, or a vine basically adapting to the conditions. And it basically what happened is farmers basically propagated their own material. Basically, they selected material from their own vineyards and planted and replanted new vineyards without nurseries and all of these things. So over time, you know, the genetics kind of flowed to new to make these mutations, and people have started to realize that you have these pink grapes in a Semillon.
You got bored, sorry.
Yeah. Mine is going to be just now. That's why I'm down in the cellar. Anyway, so Semillon Gris or Rooi Groen, that's what the farmers basically call it. South Africa, Semillon, my language in Afrikaans called Groendruif. And basically over time, you know, when the mutation started to show, the farmers called it Rooi Groendruif or red green grape. And it's a colloquial term. We have a few old vine Semillon vineyards around here, and some of them have a few mutations in them. So basically you'll walk into a vineyard here, an old vine vineyard, and you'll find, let's say 5 to 10, or maybe some vineyards show a bit more, you know, a percentage of a vineyard will be red. And that's just something that happened over time. Round about the 1970s, when the KWV was still the South African kind of moderator, regulator of vineyards and vines and plantings, they recorded it as a single variety or as a different variety. And as a farmer, you had to deliver your red Semillons from your green Semillon separately to the sellers. So yeah, basically it's the vision of my father-in-law, Barry Schreiber. He started propagating material from an old vine vineyard, from an old 1960s vineyard. We had about 3 or 4 vines that showed the spring grape bunches, and he basically propagated like farmers would have done, you know, 100, 200, 300 years ago in the Cape, and started planting, you know, multiplying it and planting his own vineyard. And yeah, basically by the time I arrived in the scene on the Waterval farm, there was some Semillon Gris or Rooi Groen ready for me, and also a lot of it. I didn't really know what to do with it, but it was, you know, it was there. I had to do something with it, and I immediately, you know, thought about, you know, giving it a bit of time on skins so that you just get that different flavor profile from the red grape, or the pink grapes, and it basically worked very, very well. And the result of about a year, it was selected from an old vine vineyard. So the vines vineyard about 8-9 years ago, and what I do with it is I basically approach it. I basically throw everything at it. I throw it in the press straight. I like a day or two cold soaks, and I start fermenting on it for a couple of days. I even, you know, the longest I keep it on skins for is about 20-25 days. So in the end, at the end of the harvest, I will have quite a big spectrum of different components and things that are, and different expressions of the vineyard. And then I basically blend the components into this wine. And in the other one is a very stylistically skin contact, natural style wine. This one is where I want to show the varietal more without too much, let's call it, winemaker's intervention. So there we go. Please just
You really get the effect of the skin contact on it, don't you, when you taste it? It's quite pronounced, actually.
I think it's a fascinating wine. If I'd had it blind, I could almost be convinced it was a sherry. To my mind, there's something slightly oxidized about it in a very good way, and I like the sort of apple skin, the saline profile, and I would say it's incredibly different to any sort of consensual or conventional view on what Semillon ought to taste like anyway. So no, credit to you guys for letting the grape speak for itself.
Did you get all that, Jasper?
Yeah, yeah, I got that, which is very interesting. It's a very interesting point that he made, because there's always a very savory kind of influence into the wine, and it's skins give me that a little bit of savoriness, but also making the wine in the style, and I think the variety itself lends itself very easily to become quite reductive. I've learned over the last 5 vintages to kind of be cautious for that reduction that it's prone to. I tend to rack the wine off its lees earlier. The very first one I made in 2017 basically was so reductive. It stank like the mud in a flay, it was really, really bad. And I had no hope for the wine turning back to fruit. But I've learned now to kind of chase fruit a little bit more, and that reductions basically sometimes lend itself to a little bit of a savoriness, a little bit of a minerality. It's definitely much less than it was a couple of years ago. But for me, the flavor profile in the wine, if it opens up a little bit in the glass, I don't know how long your wines have been open, but or most of the time, the profiles are definitely more in the orange spectrum flavor. I normally get a bit more of the nectarine kind of skin, also a little bit of mandarin or narki that we call here in South Africa. Yeah, and then it has this, kind of a whetstone minerality and a savory salty to it. So it's quite a different wine, and a very, very complex wine. It's definitely the textural part of Semillon. It catches the textural part of Semillon quite well. But yeah, it's I do think I'm still experimenting a little bit with percentages of skin contacts. I think the 2020 vintage have taken maybe leaning a little bit more skin contact than usual. And I just actually a couple of days ago I tasted with Tim Atkin, and we tasted it 2021, and it was it was a little bit different. It was a little bit more let's call more middle of the road, and not as savory.
So how does this wine perform with age? Does it gain more complexity? Does it become more savory? I mean, by the sounds of it, you haven't been making too many vintages, but if you take one of the early ones, 17 or 18, what's it showing like now?
Wow, yeah, that was a very, very interesting for me, actually, because I kind of thought that the wine would not develop faster, would not as well as I would think. And I actually opened this year in harvest time one of the old ones. Opened in 2017 for the first time in a very, very long time. The one that basically was so reductive and so smelly that I didn't even actually open a bottle for a good 5 years. So I opened that bottle and I was so surprised with the purity of the fruit that actually came back. It was really, really something that I started actually opening every vintage. I started opening 17, 18, 19, 20, all of them right next to each other. And it was amazing how basically focused and kind of pronounced the orange fruit became in the flavor profile. Talk about and as a texture, it's gonna age very well. textural, you're working with different flavor, let's say different, not the usual flavor profile, but you're going to really get something different. Texture semions, and this is a different take on it. So I would say it will age in the same kind of way, but I think definitely a bit more complex and into kind of a stylistically different direction. But yeah, happy with the results so far. I mean, every year is
Interesting. Thank you.
yeah.
Right. Well,
I'm feeling it's opening in the glass quite a lot now. A bit more fruit coming through.
Yeah, it's had an hour and 20 minutes in my glass now, roughly.
Okay. Awesome.
so let's move on to
Yeah.
next. I'm particularly excited about. I'm particularly excited to hear what everyone else thinks of. So this is the TNS single vineyard old vine Chenin Blanc, which is what I'm drinking this evening because there wasn't a spare pack for me. So I've fallen on my sword and opened a bottle of TNS.
Oh no.
Quality control, which is very important. So this is a fascinating wine. It's phenomenal, and I'm incredibly excited to hear what everyone thinks of it. So take it away, Jasper. Tell us all about this this beautiful Chenin Blanc.
Okay, cool. Okay, let's just start. Backstory. Actually, I arrived 2000 and straight out of Stellenbosch, and yeah, basically wide-eyed for this, wild west that we entered, which was the Swartland. There was nothing here. It was a couple of farmers, and that was it. There was just these amazing vineyards all around, and I started making my wine alongside Artie's. The earliest vintage was at 12. I could get my hands on his own. Well, now he's single vineyards, but so my Chenins were always, well, not Chenins, but most of my wines were built around the fruit that I could get my hands on. Along came Francisca, my wife, and she basically started getting this whole new vibe of young winemakers in the valley, and started basically hanging with us, partying, took over farm in this valley, so behind me. So over time, I basically used much different and is the difference in this particular vineyard. This is actually the first vineyard that became available to me. That Tier basically means Tier is a tiger. All of the names in around Cape Town that has something to do with Tier is basically coming from the Dutch, because the Dutch, called leopards tigers. We know there's no tigers in South Africa, but so we have all of these beautiful names, and this particular vineyard is named after a huge granite, sits up mountain overlooking it's a tiny my I have a freeze frame here. Are you guys there? Right. Oh, I hope you guys are still there.
We are still here. You're breaking up quite a bit the last few minutes. I don't know if it's your Wi-Fi where you are in the cellar. Oh,
Okay, there we go.
well, I think you're back. Or maybe not.
Power yet. There.
I'm just WhatsApping Jasper, suggesting if he can, to move somewhere with better Wi-Fi. This is more struggles of the Swartland intermittent Wi-Fi signal. So hopefully, I know he was in the cellar because it was.
It does sound like a nightmare in South Africa at the moment. I mean, it's bonkers how intermittent the power is there.
Yeah, we've just had to close down our factories at 6 o'clock tonight to protect them because of its level 6 load shedding going on. So
yeah, he sent me a picture of the schedule for the load shedding.
Yeah.
So yeah, stage 6, which is 2 a.m. till 6:30 in the morning, then 12 till 2:30, then 6 in the evening till 10:30 at night.
yeah, so yeah, pretty bad way at the moment there.
Yeah.
So one question, Daniel, how do you happen to know in the absence of our host, how old the vineyards are? Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask him. Lines are.
He's going. Yeah, so they are 40 years old. So I believe the youngest are about 35, oldest about 45. So I think it comes in an average of 40 years old.
Cool.
And it's just been John Dimbleby is here. Good evening, John. So it was interesting what you were saying, or I think what Jasper was saying as well about the wines developing in the glass, and I think this one in particular is. Oh, he's back. So I think this wine in particular changes dramatically in the glass, but in a relatively short space of time.
I was just okay. Shall we try again?
Let's try again. So I think the last thing I heard clearly was you talking about Tienesh and the reference to the tigers. So if we could sort of rewind a little bit to there.
Okay. Okay, so basically, when I got in this fruit for the first time in 2015, 16, I was obviously still making the wine at Adi's, and for me, it was immediately was very, very different from the Shannons that we were taking it at his side. Different flavor profile, was a bit more fresher style. More mineral. In much for everyone. And yeah, I always thought, if I would do a single vineyard wine, I would definitely use this vineyard. It was planted 1980, very in a little, and you get very late sunlight on the vineyard in the morning. So it's a late sleeper. It's a vineyard that stays, keeps the nights cooler temperatures for longer in the day. So you have this big diurnal shift in this vineyard, and there's different cooler microclimate, and it basically brings a little bit of a different flavor development in the wine, and it keeps the wine a bit more fresh and a bit more mineral as well. So I've always used it in my Swerwer Chenin Blanc blend. But I also wanted to showcase something off the farm, so I'm using some of the older vineyards on the farm in a different, under a different label, or on the corks. This is it's registered as a single vineyard now as well. So yeah, the wine is a little bit different from your normal Swartland Chenins. It's not that bigger, bolder, heavier textural style. It's for me always nice and a little bit more fresh, a little bit more mineral. I handle it a little bit different. I tend to keep it in barrel for a little bit longer than my normal stuff, and bottle just a selected, let's call it the reserve Chenin, whatever, a selected few barrels of this as the Tierney Chenin Blanc. But yeah, so I think that extra 5 to 6 months in barrel also brings a little bit more of a textural side, a bit more of complexity in the wine. But yeah, all in all, I think a Chenin that displays maybe a little bit of a cooler side, and yeah, it's the only barrels in the cellar that smells like this and different ways. So yeah, what the guys think of it.
I get that it's a lot more. A lot of the South African Chenins I drink are very fruit driven, and this is very savory. It is very, very nice and very complex nose as well. Where I tend to find quite a lot of the South African Chenins I've got, they have a lot of, I guess, top quality Chenins, but they are very focused on the typical Chenin flavor profile, I would say, and this is quite different.
Yeah, I'd concur. I mean, I think there's no doubt in terms of the varietal, and what I like about it is the acidity and the way it arcs all the way through the wine, which to my mind is often the hallmark of this grape. But I'd almost describe it as being sort of quite a grown-up Chenin in a way, in the sense that there is probably, as the previous gentleman said, sort of less. It's less about, or sorry, it's not all about fruit, but there's actually some other stuff going on in this wine as well. And I think that sort of balance of having some sort of quite nice florals and stone fruits, but also a more sort of mineral note to it is to my mind appealing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's very.
For me, it's the as David said, the perfume of the wine is beguiling. It's got this. You often get it from the Swartland and from Darling in particular, but also from where Jasper is. This sort of wax and lanolin character on the nose and a mealy texture. I think it was for this I did the tasting that I described it as, because it's got a salinity as well. It was almost like a salted porridge, but it's that wax and lanolin. It's like if lying under a sheepskin rug in a really nice way. But it's I love it. It's I've sort of quite taken with it.
Looking, I'm actually like.
Sorry,
yeah,
we missed that, Jasper. You cut out again.
I said you're joking that I'm actually sometimes sleeping under in winter. I have one, and have one. But yeah, it's for me at the moment as well. It displays a lot of the waxiness, the mealiness, the I want to say creamy, like a cashew cream kind of nuttiness, and it's got a little bit of that again that nice savoriness, reductive mineral texture to it. But yeah, it's interesting the fruit. It's a fresh profile. Will be kind of white stone fruit, kind of peach direction into like yellow fruits like pear and yellow apple, kind of golden delicious apple. I get this sometimes in the wine. Sometimes it gets, because of a hot afternoon sun. Also, the wine, the vineyard is facing like northwest. You get a little bit of kind of sometimes a bit of a tropical kind of pineapple feel to it. Much more rye vintage. It happens like that sometimes. But for me, when I harvest it quite on the fresher side, and when the wine is young, it's definitely more in the direction of kind of grapefruit kind of skin kind of direction. That's the flavor. I do think with the aging of the wine, with the extra couple of months that I have in barrel, or textured, different, more complex flavors, where you get this bit of this little bit of that creaminess as well coming. Yeah, I think that basically comes down to the barrel aging of it, and also the bottle aging of it as well. So I tend to keep this a bit longer and have in the bottle already, and I definitely make it in a style to age it as well, because yeah, Shannon's of the Swartland ages incredibly well.
So when you were having your technical issue, I took over hosting duties. Alex asked the age of the vineyards, and I said I thought they were about 40 years old. And then we almost heard you tell us the year they were planted, and it cut out after 1980. So if you could just fill in that little bit of information, it would be helpful.
So it's 2 years older than I am, 1983, to get that.
Okay, perfect.
You were pretty spot on then, Daniel, as you said, 35 to 45. Yeah.
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 Marvelous.
Yeah, not bad. It's not the oldest vineyard I work with, but it's definitely the most different vineyard.
So let's move on. So we're going to try the Jasper's Shiraz next. And initially I was going to include the red blend, which is Grenache Cinsault Tinta Barocca, if I remember correctly. And I tried the Shiraz, which I hadn't tried. So when I was in South Africa, we tried the red blend, the Chenin Blanc, and the Rooikroon. So I'd never tried the Tienesh, the Touriga Nacional, or the Shiraz, but ordered some of each anyway, because we wanted to represent the entire portfolio. And we only took 60 bottles of the Shiraz, being a little bit cautious out of things. I hadn't tasted it, and now I wish I had bought more. And I've told Jasper he must keep as much as he can for me, because I think it's a phenomenally exciting Shiraz. It's quite un-Shiraz. I wouldn't go as far to say that it's Syrah in style. I think it probably straddles those two styles between the sort of more of a blockbuster fruit bomb of Shiraz and a more elegant perfume style of Syrah. I'd be interested to hear from you, Jasper, why you chose to call it Shiraz rather than Syrah. whether it was to differentiate yourself from the abundance of Swartland Syrah that there is in the region, because from my side, I can't actually think of another Swartland Shiraz. I'm sure there are, but none spring to mind. Whereas if you said, name Swartland Syrah, I mean, we'd be here for a while. And given that we've only got 21 minutes to go before you're cut off from the UK, let's carry on with hearing about
Shiraz.
Swartland Shiraz.
Okay. The reason why I use Shiraz is basically this is the old term for the variety. This is the original term for the variety. I know Syrah is very popular, and people tend to couple a stylistic difference between a Syrah and a Shiraz. Shiraz being more New World and Syrah being more Old World. For me, it's not about that really. I think definitely my style is a bit more Old World, so Syrah probably would have fitted it better. But historically in South Africa, the grape came in and was the first Shiraz was made in the 1960s, 1958, 1960. It was only and it was was used for the next 50 years as Shiraz, and then when we worked at Aries and working with farmers and talking to farmers, we use the terms that the farmers use. That's why I use the Rooi Groendryf, and that's why I use Shiraz, because they don't know Syrah is very, very different for them. It's basically a term that came from somewhere else, and the older farmers around here still all call it Shiraz. That aside, I mean that's just the name of it. That aside, if you make wine in the Swartland and you find yourself some good Chenin, a good Chenin vineyard, you're going to make a great Chenin. Shiraz is the kind of the yin and the yang to the Chenin. So there's a lot of great Shiraz around as well. It's not one of the oldest varieties around in the Swartland. I mean, my red blend that you referred to earlier, that's the original, the let's call it the traditional grape varieties, the Cinsaults, Grenaches, and the Tinta Barocas and those things. Shiraz came a little bit later. That's why I kind of took it out of the blend initially and bottled it by itself. So this Shiraz is very much, I would say, more granite orientated. Again, in granite soils, I think it's a bit more of a feminine style, a bit more of a lighter style. If you go outside the mountain, into the Swartland, onto more schist soils and into a warmer microclimate, you get that more blackness in the wine. You get a little bit more of a briny, kind of olive brininess in the warm shrubs. Here, how I work with red wine is I love the fruit, and I love the way that the vineyards express themselves. They can only express themselves through their fruit. So for me, when I capture the fruit in the bottle, in the wine, then I'm quite happy already. So for me, it's quite floral. It's quite fruit driven. It's definitely, there's some red fruit. There's some darker fruit as well. And I also like to approach the extraction of the wine quite lightly. So I do smaller ferments, 100% whole bunch ferments as well. So there's just whole cluster in like a 1.5 ton fermenters. And I do basically punch downs by hand twice a day, more at the start of the ferment than later, because as your ferment basically comes to a close, your alcohol obviously rises in your ferment, and the higher alcohol you have, the harder the extraction gets. So I like to and then on actually skins for about 100 days. So it's quite a long passive extraction. And this is how I get a little bit more of a, you know, firm tannin, but not a very aggressive tannin. Yeah, and for me, it's about the fruit. You know, you get that nice, you know, red fruit, kind of black fruit direction. A little bit of that olivey brine, but it's more fruit driven. And you know, on the nose, and there's a bit more of a floralness to it, a bit of a dried rose petal kind of thing going. What do you guys think?
Yeah, prior to, you know, when I wrote my initial tasting note, I said violets and olive tapenade on the nose, blackberry on the palate, and elegant wine. So yeah, it's you know, does what does what I would like to see in a wine of this style and this variety. It's a long way from the Rhone, but I like the elegance.
I also got, like Alex, very similar taste notes. The thing that I found very different with it is a lot of the top Syrahs or whatever have a lot of white pepper. There isn't really white pepper with this. Is that a conscious decision, or is that just the way it turns out?
The white pepper and the very pepperiness in some Syrahs basically comes down to clones. The clones we have in South Africa, and also the microclimate. You tend to get a lot more pepperiness from the cooler sides. Especially think about Elgin and Elim and a new kind of region called the Ceres Plateau. So very high, very elevated. You tend to get quite a big spice and quite a pepperiness to those, let's call it a bit more cooler, much more cooler microclimates. And then obviously the clones that you get this, you have quite a lot of different vineyard clones of Shiraz, and there's a very specific clone called SH99, and SH99 is a pepper bomb. It's incredible. A lot of your, if you think of Sons of Sugarland, if you think of, I don't know if you know Bernard Bedell, Signs of Sinai. There's a few of the guys that use quite a lot of the SH99. So my Shiraz is from a single vineyard, and it's not that clone. It's the only Shiraz with it's more in the wine. But yeah, it's for me it's definitely clonal and microclimate. Extreme microclimate for that pepperiness.
That's fascinating. I you know, great explanation.
Yeah, really interesting. And amazingly, we heard all of it, which is very exciting. We had a very couple of brief from the very beginning of you talking about the Shiraz. We basically heard everything. So that is tremendous good news. You're obviously being treated to some strong Wi-Fi, but just before you get cut off.
Maybe the wind direction was good now.
It's Ardi stopped shaking your Wi-Fi tower.
Just repeat that.
Ardi stopped shaking your Wi-Fi tower.
Yeah, it can be anything from the weather to the baboons. You know, sometimes they they play along the Wi-Fi towers. Yeah, let's not jinx it.
Let's not jinx. No, I think I almost did there. So let's move on to finale. So Touriga Nacional. I'm sure some of you will know. Some of you may not know. So Touriga Nacional is one of the indigenous grapes used in the production of port. And used a lot in like Barocca, used in the Swartland as well. So Jasper, take us away on the Touriga Nacional. In the meantime, I am going to post a link in the chat box to Jasper's wines, all of which are available on our website for immediate delivery before the end of the week if you order this evening. And anyone that does have any questions in the meantime, do pop them into the chat box because we've got 10 minutes to go till Jasper gets booted off. So take it away.
Okay, yeah, the Touriga was basically under my nose all the time here, and I really didn't actually think about it or to make anything with it. I was literally focused on Red Blend and Shiraz and all of that at that stage. Until one day, you know, down at Artie's, I was very, very busy day. It was everything was happening at the same time. My wife was harvesting. My wife was harvesting for a few other guys, and they didn't have crates. And she phoned me and she said to me, "Listen, I have 30 workers looking at me, and can we harvest anything for you?" I'm like, "I don't know, what is there? What is ready?" Nothing's ready. And she's like, "Well, there's Touriga." And my wife, she's a redhead German. And at that stage, he just said, "Yes, dear." And I said, like, "Okay, just carry on with the guys, pick some Touriga for me." And I didn't really think, well, a lot about it. I made it in the same way, a whole bunch the first time. And it basically grew on me quite a lot through the year. And for me, what was very different was obviously, again, the fruit profile is completely different. The Portuguese fruit is beautiful blue fruit, beautiful, vibrant wine. It's got this brambles and like, we don't have these things in South Africa, but these, you know, these bushes that grow on the side of the roads in Europe, you know, these brambles, slow berries, that kind of thing. And I love the difference of the fruit profile in it so much, and the freshness of it. It's got a very beautiful natural acidity that not a lot of our traditional varieties have. So it's a variety that just loves the Swartland. It sits right next to my Shiraz vineyard, and it just laughs through the heat waves. I mean, the vines just, or the berries on the vine just keeps fresh, and it's just beautiful taut berries that if you go through the vineyard and you pick them, you just like these nice little explosions of flavor in your mouth, and it's like tartness in it. And yeah, so after that first vintage of, I think it was 2018, I kind of looked at it again, and I kind of approached it differently, and now I have again different takes on it. I have a whole bunch ferments. I have carbonic ferments. I have you know, I try to express the grape in all the different kinds of ways, and then yeah, I assemble it. So the Touriga basically, yeah, it's 100% whole bunch. The vineyard is 2007 planted, so also not that old, but it makes all the sense in the world to have Touriga in the Swartland. It's just so happy here. It's not fussy at all in the cellar. It's just a pleasure to work with, and makes it beautifully vibrant red wine. It has quite a bit of a history in the Swartland. If you think of, you know, the port production from Alles Verloren and these guys back in the day, so it's been in Swartland for quite some time. I would say 50, 60, even 70 years. Yeah, it's quite amazing to work with it. I love the Touriga. It's I love the vines, I love the vineyard, and I love how the wines turn out. It's not your typical port style. Again, you can see here where I'm going with fruit expression. I love fruit expressions. So it's this kind of again a lighter extraction, and a more elegant show of the grape variety. Yeah, for me, it's about the fruit and the tightness. The wine can sometimes get quite tight and taut, and sometimes have a bit of a feral reduction to it. But I do think I've hit more of a middle of the road with the flow wave profile. Around 2019, this guy, I made a very tight one, quite a southern French style one, like it's a bit stinky and it's a bit barnyardy, but this one is good. There's beautiful fruit on it, beautiful purity to it. There's this nice elegance and this beautiful taut tannin, but beautiful, I think, juicy palate.
There we go. So what
I assume that it does not have any oak.
It has.
It has. Oh, right. Okay.
100%.
You don't taste the oak.
All of
Very fresh.
Another thing about I only use larger oak, and I only use older oak barrels. If I can maybe scan quickly in the back, you see those freezers in the back. So they're all from the 1980s. And inside there's the smaller barrel rooms. All of my barrels are at least 10 years old. Some of them are from, let's call it 2001, 2002. So some of them are between 10 and 20 years old. So there's not a big oak influence in the wine. And I don't really want that oak influence in the wine because, you know what happens in a Troncaille forest in France has nothing to do with the Siebertskloof and the Paardeberg where I am. So I'm not really after the impact of the oak so much on the whites and on the reds. I do think the only wine that I make that has a bit of an oak influence is probably that Tiernes, but just because I keep it in the oak for a bit longer. But it's not necessarily the flavors that the oak bring. It's more of the let's call it the texture influence, maybe more of the aging that the oak brings. That's the aging on the oak is still for me quite special. I wouldn't change that. I'm thinking of getting a few concretes. If the budget is good, I'll maybe get some clay pots. But at the moment, I work with old oak. That's it. And try to express the vineyard and the fruit from the vine. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so we've got one question on the chat box. 3 minutes to answer. John Dimbleby saying that the Touriga tends to thrive off rocky slopes in the Douro. Is that the same case in the Swartland?
I've been to the Douro. In 2016 was amazing experience. And the younger wines of the Douro basically have this. But the guys tend to pick it a bit riper and also work it a bit harder. So the Portuguese wines, let's call it the still red wines from the Douro, I think feels a bit more heavier than this. if you get what I'm saying. There's few of them that's for me this vibrant style. This is a very vibrant style for me. I don't know if it's the way they make it. I do think it's the extraction of the wine. But yeah, it's I love it. I actually had to be convinced it's it's okay, it's good. A couple of years ago, because I didn't know much about the varieties, so I started looking at it with different eyes in a way, and kind of took a new approach to it after I realized what I'm sitting with here. So there's not a lot of guys that makes Touriga in South Africa. We're basically is basically five or six, let's call it, more significant Tourigas in South Africa, and then there's a whole lot of port obviously made in the Calitzdorp area from it. But I do think mine is quite characteristic and stylistically true to the vine, the variety and the fruit. So yeah. It's Africa also, sometimes, things don't happen. It's not automatic. Someone has to still get up and switch off the electricity, so it can be anything from 5 to 10 minutes or anything like that. They also changed the schedule this morning completely.
Perfect. Well,
Yeah,
I mean, that sounds very African.
We had 11 hours without electricity today. It's like a stage 6 at the moment. So it's the worst it's been for quite a while. Yeah, the generators will kick in, but the Wi-Fi will kick off.
So what varieties are you experimenting with at the moment? What can we expect from you in the next few years? Anything really cool, exciting happening? Or are you not allowed to?
I have a lot of strange things that you will never have heard of before. I work with Palomino. I work with Falsa Pedro. That's a grape that's been in South Africa for a very long time, also known as Gallego Dorado. I work with a hybrid grape called Ferdinand de Lesseps. It's also known as the pineapple grape. So I make a pit nut from this. It's a very, very, very aromatic grape. I work with, I have Tinta Barocca coming online, Tinta Amarella coming online very soon. We're planting Grenache Blanc, we're planting Verdelho. We're planting a bit of Columba, basically for pet nut production. So basically I have the Swerwer range, I have the single vineyard range, and then I make some natural style wines, natural Chenin Blanc, natural Semillon Gris, hard, let's call it hard skin contact, quite heavy skin contact, where the wine is blood orange in color, and yeah, a bit of pet nut. So it's basically, those kind of style wines, the natural style wines, is maybe not exactly what I want to do. It's definitely, I'm definitely after more terroir driven, more varietal wines, but the natural style wines basically keep you on your toes, and it makes your other wines better. So you're working more clever with extraction, more clever with skin contact on whites, and also more sulfur efficient. So you're working with less and less sulfur and seeing where the good golden line is. To preserve the wine on the one side and not just have all the parachute, the easy way with a lot of sulfur. So yeah, I try to experiment every year with different things, different varieties, different methods. It's an ongoing process. This year for me, a big revelation was a process the French call pied de cuve, which is basically going out into a vineyard and pre-harvesting a block, in a small amount, and basically capturing the yeast from the vineyard first, and then inoculating the natural yeast into the barrels, so that you don't have dominant yeast in your cellar but different yeast. So you have basically more complex flavors and more complex ferments. So that's something I played with a lot this year, and also on the reds, extended skin contact, passive extraction. The guys talk a lot about submerged cap these days. If you think of the Porseleinberg and also Sadi family, and Adi has also kind of implemented a bit of submerged cap. That's basically long passive extraction, getting more softer extract in your wine. And yeah, I've done it to quite some success actually this year in some of these big tanks. And yeah, I mean, you have to mix things up every year. You have to, if you do the same thing every year, I mean, you can't do that. You have to mix it up and try new things. And it's an ongoing process, and it's fun. You have fun along the way. It's the greatest time of of the year is harvest time, because you're thinking of something and you're like, shit, I'm gonna do it this time, you know, and it works or it doesn't. So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, for your interest, you know, I was in Bordeaux last weekend and met with a number of really great winemakers there, and almost every single person whom we met talked about submerged cap actually, and it does seem to be the direction of travel at the moment.
Yeah, I do think it's a great method to build your wine, build your palate, kind of getting a let's call it a weightier palate without the hard extraction, without the phenolics, within the hard greener phenolics. I suppose in Bordeaux you're going to have to be careful with high alcohols, working Cabernet stems or Merlot stems. You're going to extract a bit of green, a bit of bitterness. I mean, those guys have worked it out over the centuries, you know, with barrel regimes and everything they have. But submerged cap, yeah, it's there's something to it. I mean, there's something new every couple of years, but you've got to try it. Everyone's doing it, so you're doing it.
Well, that's the amazing thing about the wine industry, is that it's probably one of the oldest professions or industries in the world, but there's still new techniques being developed, or the reintroduction of older techniques being used. One, they may have been dormant for some time. So you said you've got some Colombard for Petnat. Are you going to make a still Colombard? Because Mr. Nordier, I think, is he's actually starting to sign his emails Captain Colombard. So I think we need to give him a little bit of competition, just so he needs to keep his game up. We don't want him getting lackadaisical.
Yeah, I mean, Ian is amazing. He's an amazing guy. I don't know why we've actually only met like I think last year for the first time. But I mean, we drank his wines and know of him, but I've never met him in person until last year. We had a day out in the mountains. We were on a game drive, and basically we drank a lot of Burgundy and stuff. And I poured my wines, and he was really amazed by the varieties and the what I do. And he basically said to me like, wow, why didn't I think of that first? And I said, and he said to me, no, you're right. And I said, well, you're right. You're right as well. And so we became, a bit more closer, I think. And he's a really great guy. He really loves to promote the younger winemakers. But yeah, no, I'm not going to take him on just yet on Colombard. I know his Colombard is from an incredibly very, very special site up in Kukenhof, and I know that area very well because my father is actually from that side. He's from Kukenhof. So I know the site, and I know Saki well as well, that works alongside Ian quite a lot. And you've got to find Colombard that's been sitting in the same position for quite some time. You're going to look at older vineyards of Colombard to get something unique, very terroir specific from it. So at the moment, I won't be after single varieties Colombard for the moment. I'm after the acid it brings. I'm after the freshness it brings, because there's not a lot of the varieties that keep the freshness and the acid for so long. And there's a lot of guys around me and friends that make a lot of Petnat, and they're all after a bit of Colombard. So I'll basically implement that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
It definitely looks
would
like
you consider doing Cinsault? Because I know that Zapfin Cinsault is really taken off, and it's that kind of freshness and that acidity that you were talking about. Are you going to look at that as a variety or not?
So Cinsault is basically the first variety that knocked my head off my. The first time I worked at Aries and I worked with Cinsault, I was completely blown away with the beautiful aromatics that a Cinsault can have, and that amazing elegance that it has. So right from the start, the very first wine I made for myself in the Swartland was Cinsault-based, Cinsault and Grenache-based. It was a wine called the Miskeljatkat. It was named after a genet. It was a story that that's actually quite a crazy story when I caught a wildcat in a chicken coop. So yeah, I made a couple of 100 bottles and sold it out, but I had to get a real brand on the label. But yeah, I make a lot of Cinsault. I have about 20 tons on the farm at my disposal. My red blend is a Cinsault driven blend. It's Cinsault Grenache Tinta Barocca blend. It's the traditional varieties of the Swartland, and it's a very aromatic style wine. Again, very juicy style. Yeah, but for me, like, showcases the old Swartland. Yeah, and the rest of this, just most of this, I don't know if you've can read on the backs there, but no, it's a bit far. But all of these tanks basically is so I have a lot of Cinsault in the cellar, and I use it mostly for my red blend, and then I also have an offshore label in Canada that's a straight Cinsault called the Drifter, which is basically a rough translation for Swerwer. Drifter, Swerwer, same thing. So yeah, I do a lot of, I make a lot of Cinsault, and I love Cinsault. I really love Cinsault. It's just, it makes the Swartland and South Africa, it's the building block. It's the workhorse of South Africa. All the great wines in South Africa always had a bit of Cinsault in it, but it's super awesome to work with it. So yeah, love it. Probably one of my favorite varieties. Next to Tinta. I love Tinta Barocca. It's an incredible variety. And Antoriga, but yeah, they're my favorites.
Alrighty, well, I think your man who's meant to be pushing the load shedding button is maybe.
What's going on here? Oh yeah,
He might, maybe he's got Babalas and he's having a little sleep. So even though we were expecting to be brought to an abrupt end, but we have a bit more genius. So thank you, Jasper, for your time this evening, and delighted actually the Wi-Fi has been on good form for the last half hour or so. But the guy that's fallen asleep, he's obviously lent on the Wi-Fi button and turned that up to 11 as well. So has anyone got any last questions for Jasper before we call it an evening? I've put the link to his wines on our website into the chat box, so you can click that and get straight to them without further delay. So thank you from me, Jasper. And if anyone else wants to shout anything out before we go, then
thanks very much. Very
really appreciate it, and it's always great to meet winemakers with so much passion.
Thank you, Jasper.
It's a great pleasure, guys. Good. It's amazing to share what we do here. It's a passion, and to share the passion is the easiest thing in the world. So I really appreciate your interest and your feedback in the wines, and I really hope Daniel and the guys are doing well and selling that side. So yeah, thanks a lot for all your interest. Yeah, we we have a work in front of us, and that's what we do. And hope you guys enjoy on the other side of the world.
Perfect.
Cheers.
Thank you.
And as I've said before, I'm sure you all know, but for anyone who does use Vivino, please do rate Jasper's wines on Vivino. A lot of these that we've just brought in haven't got enough ratings yet for them to be given an official Vivino average. And until they do, it limits how the algorithm picks them up. So we need to get as many ratings for it as possible. High ratings, please. If you didn't like it, then you can just not bother. But pop those on, get them up there so other people can find out about them, and they can get involved themselves, buy some off the back of everyone's ratings, and just find out more about these amazing wines.
I've one more
Awesome.
testimonial for the Shiraz. Sorry, I've been caught in the office tonight, Daniel, so I had to be a little bit careful with when and what I chimed in with. But the Shiraz in particular that I had last week, I thought was fabulous. It's a style I'd love to see more of. And one thing that I was particularly impressed by that one was the purity of the fruit. And it was almost made in a style that almost took me to some of the upper slopes of South America, but of course without the oak influence that you typically see over there. The purity of the fruit was I was really impressed by, and I'd love to see more Shiraz vines crafted in this way when they get into the winery. Great to hear from you, to hear a little bit more about your story. And these are wines that I certainly will be buying more of, and that actually represent some amazing value for UK-based buyers. So yeah, we'll track your track your wines with keen interest over the forthcoming years.
Absolutely. Well, there we go. And on that note,
thanks so much for that. That's an amazing comment. Yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah. Awesome.
amazing. Well, thank you all.
Really appreciate
I'm
it.
sure I will see all of you again very soon. Good night and good luck.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.